Namaste everyone and welcome to the new episode of Breaking It Down. Today we are going to discuss things in a new format. So the new format decided by Team Bharat Bhagya Vidhata is basically a 3-point plan, which is that in every week we will be choosing 3 news which are very important and we will be breaking it down for you. So this is the first video where we are testing out this concept. To tell us in the likes and the comment section whether you like this idea or not. So we have not done a breaking it down video for many weeks. So we decided that we will do a 3-point program or 3-point structure in this video. So we'll be taking news not from only this week or the past week, but some weeks earlier also, which is still relevant today. So we will be discussing about 3 issues today. The first one is a national issue, which is the first ever or first of its kind drone attack on our Indian Air Force base. Then the second news is going to be international news, that is Mr. Bennett is elected as the new Prime Minister of Israel, and why that is very important for India. And the third aspect is how a very famous news reporter called Sucheta Dalal changed the dynamics of stock market again in India. So these are the 3 things or the 3 news which we are going to analyze today. Moving on to the first news, which is India has faced its first ever drone attack. Now this drone attack has happened for the first time on not only Indian civilian side, but it has happened on a more protected area, which is Indian Air Force base. The target was suspected as an Indian Air Force base. It did not hit its target. It crashed in between, and the factors were wind problem. They did not have the exact geographical coordinates, right? And here I am reminded of a dialogue from a very famous series called Family Man, which says that Srikanth, they don't have to be right every time. So the terrorists don't have to be right every time, but we have to be right every time in the war. So our forces have to prevent every drone attack every time it comes. So this time they have missed their target, but it's possible that next time they won't. So we don't have to give them a chance to attack our bases again. But now the problem is, how do we counter drone attacks? Because the whole philosophy of this jihadist Islamic movement which was across the border from Pakistan and Kashmir was that you have to cultivate people who can do your work on the ground, who can be your pawns on the ground, who can go at targets at targeted sites and attack them, right? That was the foot soldiers, that was the category of foot soldiers which was frequently required, especially after 2014, because Indian Army has started huge combing operations. The statistics also show that killing of LET or other Jamaat terrorists has increased in Jammu and Kashmir, and thanks to our Home Minister, Defence Minister and the Prime Minister for showing that political will, and we are not treating the people who go against India as our political batchmates and benchmates anymore, especially the Hurriyat conference. So we have shown them their place, which needed to be shown for many years. But reverting back, this scale of foot soldiers was needed, and it involved heavy costs. You needed to train them, you needed to make them cross the border. That was another costly affair. You had to bribe so many people for that. You had to send them back, weaponry hai, so many things again, and that did not the probability of the success of that attack from the terrorist side was also quite low, because people would be caught crossing the borders, going to training camps. People would be caught coming again back to Kashmir or related areas. People would be caught just while they were, squatting in some houses, stuff like that. So the probability was very low of an attack being successful. With drone attacks, however, the whole dynamic changes. If you lose a drone, to assemble a new one and to launch a new one, you do not need more than 15 minutes. People who can assemble drones in less than 15 minutes are also available, and they are trained, right? So one person can launch at least 4 drones in a single go in under 1 hour, right? So the whole dynamics of how terrorism is going to take shape in Kashmir, or India for that matter, is going to change, because now you don't need a delivery vehicle as a human. You don't need human as a delivery vehicle to put explosives, to put material which can cost you life at some place. That can be done by drones. Now the permissions of drones and the rules and regulations for drones are extremely loose in India. There are rules of different state governments, there are rules of central governments, but the enforceability and the mechanism to enforce these systems and laws is very less, is very ill-equipped. I don't think even a lot of police stations know what drones are or UAV are, right? So now, to counter this kind of terrorism, because imagine, this is not just a cross-border problem, it can be an inter-country problem also. That I have a drone somewhere and I want to hit a target from my house, I can launch it from my house also without caring about how to take drone to a spot. And even shooting down drones is extremely difficult with manual guns and manual weaponry. You need automatic artificial intelligence, automatic systems which can trace and destroy drones. So India currently in its home department is not very developed with this. We need rules and regulations which will prevent these things from happening. This is a watershed moment in India's attempts to fight terror. Mark these words. It is a absolute watershed moment, right? So this is why this first drone attack holds such significance in history of India's terror fight. Okay, going to the second news. Mr. Bennett has become the Prime Minister of Israel. Now, Israel and India's friendship is a very interesting topic, because before 2014, especially in the UPA and the Congress era, and even in the NDA-1 era, we wanted to be close with Israel, but for some diplomatic reasons, diplomatic reservations, we couldn't do it. We used to meet Israeli ministers, we used to meet Israeli foreign diplomats, but we used to do it secretly, so that we don't show ourselves or showcase ourselves as anti-Palestine, right? However, from 2014, this stance changed. Prime Minister to Prime Minister meetings started happening. Officially, Israel was asked for help even during COVID times, and Israel has forwarded that help without any hesitation to India, and even India has helped Israel a lot in their diplomatic stand. Again, there are some instances when India has taken a neutral position when it comes to Palestine, but again, you have to understand that sometimes taking a diplomatic stand sometimes, and taking a diplomatic stand or taking an inclinated stand every time has huge difference in international relations. So now, what is Mr. Bennett going to give India, or how is India going to achieve any success with relations with the new Israeli Prime Minister? You have to understand one thing, that this Israeli Prime Minister is standing or sitting on his throne on a very loosely built coalition of parties who have extremely contradictory ideologies. Some parties in this coalition are also Arab conservative parties. And the new Israel Prime Minister himself is from an ultra right wing party. But they have done this coalition just to keep Mr. Netanyahu away from the seat of power. Now, this can remind you of a state government's coalition which has been formed to keep a party away from power. I won't name which state, but you know that is a simile to this. But however, India is going to gain threefold. First is Mr. Bennett has been a CEO and has been a capitalist himself after he left army. So he has a mindset of deregulating private business, and with Make in India and different initiatives which are going to grow businesses. Israel is known for its defense technologies. India is also now promoting private sector defense technologies, again related to UAV, related to drones. Coming back to our first topic, so we can have a heavy private sector collaboration with Israel's private sector when both the prime ministers are inclined towards deregulation of private affairs and private business as well as pro-capitalists. The second benefit of Mr. Bennett being the Prime Minister of Israel is he was serving in the government in different capacities, be it Chief of Staff to Benjamin Netanyahu, be it Minister of Diaspora, Minister of Education, Minister of Defense, Minister of Revenue. So he has seen the relations with India grow. So I think he entered government and politics in 2008-2009, became Prime Minister in 2021. So he has almost 11, 12, 13 years experience being in power, watching how Netanyahu is handling India's relations, because he was Minister of Diaspora, he had frequent relations and frequent connections with India's counterpart, where many Jews also stay in India, and he was engaged with the opportunity and responsibility to take care of Israeli and Jewish diaspora across the world. So he had close connections with how diplomacy works also. So it's not going to be very difficult for India to deal with him with respect to establishment to establishment contact, because he is a part of establishment. The third benefit to India is that because it's a loosely built coalition of contradictory parties, there are some restrictions on him going against Palestine as well. So it actually helps how India looks at Palestine and Israel on a quasi-neutral-ish level. He's compelled by this coalition to look at this situation in the same manner. So it is not going to contradict India's stance, which has been original from 2014. It has leaned towards Israel, openness towards Israel, which should rightly be recognized and appreciated. However, he being an ultra-rightist person wouldn't have made, if he would have been ultra-rightist Prime Minister with his party in majority power and no coalition, then it would have been awkward for India to maintain relations with him for a neutral stance of India, right? So these are the things which are going to help India. And the third is Sucheta Dalal, again disturbing the dynamics of stock market in India. I'm sorry, it's late night and I'm really tired, so there can be some jumble in my words, but I'll still continue. So Sucheta Dalal tweeted some things on Twitter a while back, which said that due to return of an old player of stock market, a certain group's stock have been rising, have been bullish in the market, and this scam and this scandal is hard to prove outside the black box of SEBI. Black box means something which is not comprehensible, something which is not transparent, something which cannot be checked. So there's a black box of SEBI, which it's not a black box, but it's an algorithm. It's a very closed circuit of algorithm about how prices of shares are determined. It is obviously not disclosed, and it is obviously not recommended to be disclosed to people Because if people get to know the algorithm about how stock market prices are decided, it's game over. You will have to change the whole algorithm, the nature of algorithm, how it functions. So, of course, black box, it's non-transparent for a reason. It is non-transparent for preventing such kinds of scam which come along the way. But again, she claims that it's hard to prove. But then she says that there's a group. It's not a single company. Comments indicate, and I won't say a word that I am absolutely sure about this thing. Comments indicate and the responses indicate that this is the Adani group. And if you see, it is true that since few weeks, Adani Group's shares have been soaring like anything. Every day for a few days, I think for a week or two, Adani shares were hitting the upper circuit. Upper circuit is basically a price band above which a share is not allowed to go. That is a restriction put by SEBI to control price volatility. So if I say, in stock market, it is very easy if there is no price band and upper circuit and lower circuit. And look at circuit in electronics world. So a circuit is going on, and if something happens, this circuit is broken. This is the upper circuit. So if price goes up, it hits the upper circuit and the transactions stop. Right? What is lower circuit? Price falls down, so down. So it hits the lower circuit, the circuit goes off and the transactions stop. So it prevents for a share soaring too high and a too low. So it doesn't allow the share to become zero in one day or growth of 1000% per day. So that's the price band. So Adani Group started hitting upper circuits. Now when do you hit upper circuits? When there are a lot of purchasers and no buyers in the market. There are a lot of purchasers and no sellers in the market. So you have all the demands but no supply. So it hits the upper circuit. So this was the condition. The share was growing at such rates that it was hitting upper circuit every day. Adani Groups, many shares. Adani Power, Adani Green, Adani Ports, many shares are there. Now, what happened after this tweet was everyone seemed to recognize which this share was, and the price started falling down. It was supplemented by one more news that some foreign institutional investors were and their accounts were seized by SEBI due to non-disclosure of details. Now, foreign portfolio investors or foreign institutional investors are people who can sit outside country and put their money in our share market. That's the easiest way to define them. And there are many restrictions on these FPIs. There is a huge and long disclosure proceedings which they need to comply for. And due to the non-compliance to such disclosure, their accounts were freezed. Now, all these three groups, I don't have the names with me right now, these three groups had bought Adani Group's shares worth 48,000 crore rupees. Now imagine a person who has had faith in this group and who has purchased shares worth of 48,000 crores and his account has been now freezed. It obviously has a negative impact on the market, and market reacted nothing differently. Adani Group's price shares started falling, I think, until a day or two earlier. Last week, it became stable again, and the business is as usual. But the point here to analyze is that can someone sitting outside India influence India's stock market, India's share market? Because India's share market is basically the valuation of public shares, and that public shares determines the valuation of companies, which overall determine the valuation of the whole Indian economy. So can a person or institution sitting outside in the country determine what is the valuation of Indian companies? Because apparently if you pour a lot of money, you can. The question here is that SEBI is very strict when it comes to its actions, but it is also very lazy to take these actions in the first place. SEBI's actions are very strict, they are very harsh. एक दिन में आदमी को भिखारी कर सकता है SEBI का हथौड़ा. Always remember that. But Hatoda comes very late. When all the crime is done, all the money is siphoned off, then the Hatoda comes, right? So our institutions, as a lot of institutions, not only need to be strict, but also they need to be very efficient and quick. They should gauge what is happening. They should anticipate all the further movements. Of course, the law has to be amended in that way that checked anticipatory powers are to be given to the institution, and thus they are functioning. Thank you for listening for such a long episode, and these episodes will continue to be so long because we are going to analyze many aspects here of a week. The credits of research of this video go to Mihir Lele and Rahul Balakrishnan and the present party. Thank you so much guys for helping me with the research, and thank you so much guys for watching this video in its entirety. We will come up with such an exciting video next week. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching Bharat Bhagya Jata. Jai Hind, thank you.